All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode. We're going to be talking about the user experience, engaging folks with 3D content, and a lot of the cool experiences that you may not be aware of that you can do today on the web. Today, Mike is joining us from Threedium. I'm going to pass it over to him to give a quick introduction.
Hey, Mike, and a pleasure to be here. It's always lovely to be able to share my thoughts with people in the same space, with having the same understanding about the challenges and the opportunities. So hopefully we can have a really good in-depth discussion and give some ideas for people to brainstorm about how they can leverage this technology for them to go and shine. As you said, I'm one of the co-founders of Threedium, also the CEO of the company. I've been the CEO for the past almost 7 years. So I can probably label myself as a veteran in the
Oh,
space.
absolutely. Yeah, you
I've
should.
seen through the thick and thin. But yeah, pleasure to be here, as I said, and look forward to deep diving.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so 7 years, a lot has changed over those time period. That was around when I was doing, AR at Wayfair, and we were really excited about this kind of concept of taking a 3D thing, model, physical product representation, and kind of putting it in your space. Have you found that to like have evolved? Like there was a lot of excitement in the early days. I think it's still cool technology today, but what have you seen, people's kind of reaction to the technology been?
It's a great question, and I'll basically um, go back into memory lane and basically tried to resurface the kind of feedback we were getting when we started pitching Threedium to the world, right? And I very distinctively remember when we approached I don't want to name the brands obviously, but when we approached a few of the innovation folks and the commerce managers in very top tier one kind of brands, and we were presenting them Threedium and the idea to have 3D and augmented reality representations of your product. They were like, hold on. You guys mean that we're gonna invest into building something like a Pokemon Go for our shopping experience? And
That
and
is,
and
yeah,
that's as
correct,
far
like,
as they
time
could.
period, right? That's what everyone was thinking of augmented reality at the time, and it's interesting, at the very beginning, it wasn't even that much like of an AR experience, it was more walking around the map and, finding things. Most people turned off the AR experience, but yet that was what I often heard that at the same time, like, everyone would bring that up. They're like, "Oh, Pokemon AR, Pokemon, okay, like, how does that work for commerce?" Right?
That's exactly right. I remember we were talking to all these like super luxury brands, and they were keep relating that to Pokemon. So effectively, the conversation was already over before it began.
Mhm.
But yeah, we had many people saying to us, "Hey, what the heck are you guys doing? Get yourselves a real job. What is this?" Right now, fast forward into 2025 now. We're sitting to the epicenter of digital transformation, content creation, content delivery for all major brands across an array of different verticals. So you can see very specifically how the idea, how the notion, how the approach around 3D changed over the past 6 to 7 years, and it changed radically, to be honest. COVID did help a lot. We're not going to lie about it, but finally, the discussions we're having today, as opposed to 7 years ago, are discussions that are way more matured, way more advanced. We're able to think bigger at scale. We're able to discuss about problems that brands have and how they can really try to solve them using 3D, augmented reality, the whole digital twin life cycle, to improve their operations, their customer engagement, their content creation capabilities, and we're truly seeing the brands are now approaching this kind of technology with more seriousness
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
thinking that actually this could be a part of their digital tech stack and could be a critical component as well. Now, with
nice.
that being said, we're still not there yet. Like, there's still a lot of things that we need to do as as leaders in this industry, as people paving the way to try to educate brands even more. Um, it's probably sometimes taking longer than one would have expected for things to really truly take off. Uh, but it is taking off, and nobody can argue with us, neither with you nor with me, that if not next year, by the end of 2027 maybe, every single site in the world is going to have a 3D viewer for their product, an augmented reality representation of their products, digital
Yeah, we've definitely
try-ons,
seen
virtual
that, like,
try-ons.
transformation happening more and more, and, yeah, I think you're right. The earlier phase, it was a lot more explanation of even how the technology works. Now everyone's
Yeah,
aware that the technology works, and it's more how can the technology impact you specifically, like, in your category, your vertical, your business, and then there's different approaches and different, technologies. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of the different offerings you guys have from, like, configurators to virtual try-on. How do you work with a brand to kind of select which experiences are going to be the most impactful for them?
yeah. Our notion when we started was that it was a rather ambitious vision. Is that we wanted to build the 3D internet, and we keep saying that because we always felt that we live in a 3D world, and the internet is catching up, right? So
Mhm.
as generations evolve, as they become more accustomed with using screens to blur their reality with the digital world and vice versa, obviously 3D is going to be a key component to bridge those two realms. We always felt as well that eventually key content formats that used to rule content delivery on the internet, like PDFs, JPEGs, and what have you, are going to be replaced by 3D files. That is what
Mhm.
we always had bet against, and it's slowly happening. Um, so we wanted to build an infrastructure that can democratize the use of 3D across any kind of screen, any kind of omni-channel placeholder. Um, it was always been an ambitious goal, but and something that would have taken ridiculous amounts of patience, of innovation. Keep breaking things until you're able to provide a very scalable process and infrastructure for enterprises, because those are the significant ambassadors, basically, if you like, that they're going to define the adoption and the acceleration of this technology in the space. If those guys say yes, if those guys double down on it, then everybody else is going to follow naturally.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so that has always been our focus. How do we democratize these things? How do we make it very easy for those enterprises to feel that they're ready to double down and scale using 3D? And having that in mind, we always started thinking about, okay, what are the biggest pain points that those guys are having in terms of product visualization, in terms of customer engagement challenges. So we started creating features that could immediately go and tackle and solve those problems. We first started with 3D viewers, because back in the days when we had launched Threedium, that was 2018. um, there weren't any real 3D viewers in the market. It was basically Sketchfab and some open source stuff, and people were either using I don't know, some standardized WebGL stuff, or I don't know.
Yeah, it was a lot less
There was
ubiquitous back in the day, right?
exactly
Like,
there
it
there
wasn't
were
as
there
easy to
weren't
just
that many
email a
options.
3D file or just, like, to view a link that included the 3D experience without maybe getting an app or downloading some, large amount of code to empower it. Whereas, yeah, today we're
Exactly.
seeing a lot more kinda quick, streamlined, like, 3D just kinda pops up almost behind the scenes, and there
Yeah.
are efforts on the browser side to make like more of like a model element that's native. It's not quite there yet, right? Like, it was a big deal, I think, when the canvas element became like a native element and you could have like native video content in the browser. I think like we're not too far away from 3D becoming like a native like browser feature, so you don't have to download an extra
Yeah.
library on top of it. But it's definitely, yeah, made a lot of progress over the years.
100%, 100%. As I said, a lot of the things that we kept encountering at the time was that there was a lot of memory leakage on the 3D viewers. The loading times were ridiculously a lot. It was very, very painful to integrate without breaking things on the website's code. So it that was the first thing that we wanted to solve. How do we make it very easy, very easily integratable, very easily adopted, it had to be mobile first as well. So how do you ensure that whatever you do operates very smoothly on a mobile experience, and that users are able to open up their website through a mobile device and it's not going to crash? And how do you ensure that all the products that you render through that reviewer, they look in a top notch quality, because that was also problematic at the time. So that was
Yeah,
one of
we
the
did a
first
lot
things
of
we
work
went to.
within Chronos on that, like visual consistency, because we were finding that different viewers and different browsers, even or different devices, were rendering colors slightly differently, or they were
Yeah,
rendering some of the features, or not supporting some of the extensions. It's definitely come a long way, and like visual consistency is a lot more. I wouldn't say 100% solved, but like 90% of the way there. Things like tone mapping, or recent
yeah.
developments that we're trying to get consistent across the board. But yeah, again, another area where we've seen a lot of improvement.
Exactly. And we also felt that there was a huge gap. So we also doubled down a lot on very challenging materials, such as glass, diamonds, or even more uh, more complicated textures like fair or mink, things like that. And we always felt that if we nail those kind of textures, then we're probably going to have the best viewer to accommodate the vast majority of enterprises across industries.
Mhm.
So we focused a lot on that. We even have two patents on a few of our shaders, like the diamond shader, the glass shader, and the fur shader. And I think that was key to strengthen basically our position in the market, getting some of the big enterprises to finally start to pay attention, because they could see their products really looking good in those viewers, and actually those viewers wouldn't destroy their customer experience, nor they were going to crush their website.
Yeah,
So
get the performance up and the quality up, and those are the big key
100%.
drivers.
So those were the quick wins. So our 3D viewer was actually the Trojan horse for us to make ourselves known in the market. Then we said, okay, what else is important? Then we started seeing that configurations, personalizations are key for many enterprises, especially in their commercial go-to-market.
This is unique
Everyone these
value
days
that
are talking
3D
about
adds too. Yeah, right, like, so if
exactly.
you're
So
making that investment in 3D and you can now configure their product, it's like, "Oh, okay, this is something." It's not just a, photography, augmentation or spinner or like a 360, because you could do some of those things, like, with image sets or with video content, but, like, the configuration and customization, that's unique to 3D, and I think it is really powerful.
100%. And therefore, naturally, we were able to build templates and more robust configuration options within our platform, so that people that use our viewers could easily convert them into configurators and be able to launch them without the need of any agencies or any or too many people involved to bring up and integrate a configurator. And that worked out a lot. And now in 2025, configurators are probably the second in demand feature that clients come and ask to create using our platform. And then after the configurators, and as you said, it was a 3D ads, because a lot of brands, they want to find ways to build more effective rich media. People are becoming ever more immune in standard images or video ads.
Mhm.
So naturally, immersive content makes more sense. We've also seen that with a few tests we've done with a few publishers like Financial Times, that people engage twice as much on a 3D real time 3D ad versus a video ad, and that drives significant more click through rates as well. And then the other thing that we kind of seen in this whole Gen AI wave, and 2024 being a quite restrictive year for innovation, because there were budget cuts, there were recessions. So we've seen a lot this notion of do more with less, and therefore we've seen many brands coming to us saying, "Hey, since we've got all this amazing 3D stuff on your platform, guys, what else can we do with them? Can we create static renders?" So we went from how we were trying to convert a 2D image into a 3D, back into the
Now we're back to
into the
2D
demanding
imagery.
of
Yeah.
how can I use a 3D to create a 2D kind of thing, images, and
Mhm.
that was interesting. So we started seeing brands utilizing their 3D assets to create 2D content without going back into creating physical prototypes or physical goods or renting photo shoot studios, etc., etc. That was interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, the
And then
digital
the other
production
thing that
workflow
we
is a nice advantage for folks because once they have that 3D asset, they can reimagine it in different environments, in different settings, with different options, and then you can personalize your content a lot more because you don't have to physically ship it somewhere and reset it up every time you want to do it.
100%, 100%. And then again, as they were doubling down on understanding the abilities and capabilities that a digital twin has for them, they started saying, okay, where else can I distribute that? So within the platform, we enabled integrations and plugins to be able to use those 3D assets if you want to distribute them within Amazon.com or um, on any other hologram device, or if you wanted to distribute them within different games, or if you wanted to build an experience on Unreal Engine or Unity. So we also built plugins that enable them to distribute all this kind of content anywhere else, and it doesn't have to just live within the Threedium or Unlimited 3D ecosystem. And basically, as we kept growing the features and capabilities of our technology, we ended up building this end-to-end infrastructure for digital twins to design experiences, to design content and distribute content and gather data analytics through that content. And that helped us to basically rebrand our platform to Unlimited 3D because we naturally give unlimited 3D options to our partners. And that's how Threedium has evolved in the current state that we are.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, and I love that kind of sense of like we're building the content once and then using it everywhere and distributing it to all the channels that can and take it in. And I think we're both in that shared mindset of like 3D is going to become like the lifeblood of all these future experiences. It's already being plugged into so many experiences today that making the investment, already makes sense for brands. But if you don't make that investment, then you're going to really find yourself behind once this content's like, table stakes for having any of these, especially if you think about like, the metaverse or wearables devices that are naturally 3D, that content, like if it's just kind of old flat 2D photos, really just kind of stands out in a bad way. Whereas the
Yeah,
3D content today, kind of like it enhances the look and feel, and it's an important investment. But I think pretty soon, the next couple of years, we're going to start to see if you don't have 3D, you're really going to be behind. And I think that's another motivating factor for a lot of brands that want to make sure they're staying up to date with the latest.
100%. 100%. We are already seeing that as well. Many brands that came to us in 2024 and 2025, they came to us because they've seen some of their competitors using our stuff. So you're already seeing that flywheel effect kicking in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then kind of speaking to some of the adopters and in industries and verticals, like what are you finding like the main kind of current state of the art is like who's investing in this like all the time versus maybe some of the industries that are starting to ramp up and we're seeing more investment in?
Excellent question. And it changes every now and then, depending on the state of the economy, depending on which industries are all of a sudden exploding versus others.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but for us, when it really kicked off was during COVID, where a lot of the retailers found themselves in this unique position that nobody was using their physical stores, so they had to stay afloat, they had to stay competitive, and therefore they started paying more attention on the product visualizations of their websites. And that really put us in the spotlight because we started working with some phenomenal brands which at the time they were doing stuff opportunistically. They didn't really have a plan or a well thought long term strategy, but they had to stay competitive. And once we started engaging with them, they've seen how easy it was to get set up, to go live, to maintain this whole thing live. Once they started seeing some good customer engagement results as well in terms of time spent on product, how much time people spend orbiting a product, zooming in specific parts. the increase in add to basket, and so on and so forth. Those things became KPIs that they really wanted to preserve, and that's what also helped us to build long-term relationships with those brands. Now, for us back in the days, those brands that were naturally more excited were actually luxury brands, because immersive product displays and enhanced product visualizations, are very much aligned with
It's a premium look and
the
feel,
notion of
right?
luxury,
Yeah.
right? You
Hmm.
want the most expensive and top quality products to have top quality visualization representations, right? And the storytelling is important as well. And 3D ticks all those boxes. So luxury retail was basically what put us on the map. Then, as we continued growing and starting to get a grip of it and starting to get really good KPIs, which we felt comfortable building business cases and use cases for other industries, we then expanded within furniture and homeware, which, going back to your point back in Wayfair, that it made so much sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
We then
consider purchase,
expanded,
spatial, etc. Yeah.
right? So we then expanded into consumer electronics, because it also makes sense to be able to visually understand more complex products better, also how they appear in your space, and so on and so forth.
You can kinda
And
highlight product features too and maybe see underneath the product. Like 3D lets you do those kind of exploded views or just different visualizations that may bring the product a little bit more to life than, because some things
exactly,
like, like a smartphone, you can look at a couple of images, but it doesn't really bring the product to life in the same way that visual kind of 3D storytelling can.
exactly. And those were the early adopters. Those were the people that they really gave us the chance. And as we continued to prove ourselves, moving into 2024, where budgets were way more conservative for the retail world, because they were going through all these kind of recession and different macroeconomic challenges. We also felt that we were ready to expand into other categories, and at the time, we tapped into industries like healthcare and defense, and agriculture, machinery, that we never thought that they will be ready. And trust me, at the time when we started, these industries are so traditional. So by definition, they're always late adopters. But because we had so much data and we had so much knowledge in how to work with enterprises and scale with enterprises, we were in a good position at the right time to engage with these kind of industries, offer them the confidence that they wanted to feel in order to engage with us. And therefore, we expanded into those verticals as well.
Nice. And it does kind of showcase how that adoption curve has been shifting and we're moving, into the mainstream. Like, yeah, that early adopter phase, like it made sense for products that were maybe like a higher ticket item that people were thinking about more, spending more time considering the purchase. And then the brands would, hopefully have a larger profit margin to reinvest into the technology. But now that, I mean, the technology costs have come down as well, right? So it's a little easier for
Yeah.
folks to make that initial investment. Kind of, speaking to that adoption and growth, like how are you finding brands that maybe started with smaller pilot projects or focused like specific like category or catalog like item, area? How have they evolved to trying to think about digitizing their entire catalogs? Because I think that's kind of one of the next big phases, and it's a lot of work that's kind of where we try to come in at Super DNA, let people scale up their full digital production. But how are you seeing that like evolving from small investment to big investment?
Um, I mean, I, I there's no one right answer. It depends on the industry, and depends, as again, on the macroeconomic level as well, and also it depends on the readiness of each team to change your existing workflows and processes. And we have a few large enterprises that every year they're growing 150% their usage with us, right? Going from 20 products to 50 products to 150 products, and now they're with more than 200 products digitalized on our platform, because they already found a way to scale the way for them to create their products in 3D. But we then have companies that they wanted to focus on one specific thing. That thing works for them. Let's say a configurator. So they're still not ready yet to make huge investments to transition away because either they have huge turnover of staff, so they don't really have a consistent team that can continue operating on a long-term
Mhm.
strategic basis, or because some of the products they're so low in price, let's say CPG goods, sometimes it still doesn't make sense for them to fully digitalize their entire catalog to do so,
Yeah,
and
you
it
have to,
would
like,
still be
squeeze
more.
for the lemon, right? Or there's a limited amount of like, juice that you're gonna get out of the squeeze for some of the smaller, less, popular products, and I think over time, part of the, driving the cost down is gonna help, like, get that
Yeah,
long tail. But yeah, still in
yeah,
the near term, you're right. Like people are still mostly focused on their best sellers, that kind of mid, market. And then as it starts to fall off into the long tail of, diverse products that are maybe expensive to digitize or they're just not having enough margin, those ones are still being kind of left out. And I would agree to that point.
exactly. So just to summarize, basically, we're seeing a lot of the luxury brands and a lot of the fashion apparel brands. Those are the main categories that drive that 150% increase year on year in terms of usage,
Hmm.
because they start to become way more you know they're basically becoming way more accustomed with 3D and 3D files in their workflows. They already have huge amount of data libraries with materials, scan materials, or products that they're not 100% different year in year. So if it's a shoe, you can change it with new materials and you have a new product. Therefore, it's easy for them to create a new catalog with digital products based on their last year's collection, what have you, right?
Yeah, that's right. The
So
more you have, the easier it gets to make more.
so typically fashion, apparel, furniture, those are categories that you see that constant surge in usage in terms of digitalizing their catalogs more and more every year. Then with companies that don't have that they have maybe more than 10,000 products. Yes, they don't intend to digitalize their entire catalogs, but going back to your point, they want to focus on their best sellers or their most differentiated or very bespoke kind of product that they deserve a much more you know browsing autonomy kind of experience. And then you've got the CPGs basically that they're like, look, we're more interested in utilizing this for either enhancing our storytelling or enhancing the way that people kind of engage with our products on the homepage or in specific retail ecosystems that we want to improve our product discovery phase. But when it comes to CPG, and people usually don't spend that much time on product discovery. They already know what kind of shampoo they want to buy. There's already strong loyalty, so they don't necessarily care about scaling their 3D for all their products. It has to be very tactical.
Makes
Um,
sense.
however, what we are seeing as well, because of these improvements in Gen AI and the ability now to really convert a sketch or an image into a 3D asset, CPG starts to pay more attention. So going towards the end of 2024 and early 2025, we're seeing more and more of those CPG brands coming to us, wanting to deep dive more into the Gen AI aspect and try to use it more to see if it offsets costs
Yeah,
from
it makes
physical
sense. I mean, it's a
photography and what have
lower,
you.
quality output perhaps, but it's also a lot cheaper to get involved. And if the quality for the product visualization is less critical to the customer, then it's another way to get more, 3D content that maybe it has a role to play in some different consumer, engagement or behavior or integration to like, gaming or advertising in another realm. So I think, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating development. As we're
Mike,
kind of, oh
quick
yeah,
pause.
go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna switch on the lights because it became overly cloudy all of a sudden, so it's dark here. Just one
Okay,
sec, one sec,
no
one sec.
worries.
Okay, sorry, man.
That's all right.
It became
Yeah,
extreme winter all of a sudden. So yeah.
no worries. Well, this is actually pretty good timing to wrap things up, and I want to just give you a chance to, anything we didn't cover today, to just kind of get that out, and then, we'll thank everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again. It was nice chatting with you about this technology, Mike. I think it's fascinating to see how the consumer experience continues to evolve, and we'll have to check back in as it continues to, influence how people are discovering and engaging with products.
100%, man. And thanks so much for inviting me here. I really hope that we were able to give some good insights to the audience, and keep up the great job with Super DNA, because you guys are catalysts for for the brands to be able to have an affordable and fast access to 3D assets, and that in turn is the fuel to our engine. So we need more of whatever you guys do.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep the rocket fuel coming, and we'll see you guys next week.